here's a few news stories that were interesting. I saw this about a week ago. The new iOS, the new iPhone, I find my phone works even when the power's off. And that sounds kind of strange and creepy, so I was glad to see this guy explain how it worked. Apparently, this is not really new. There are several parts of the phone that continue to run when the power is off, and that's so it can wake up, I guess. I'm not sure, but there's a thing called Apple Always On Processor. And all this stuff is pretty poorly documented, but there's a limited processor that stays on even when the power is off. And it does things like listen to see whether it's time to wake up the other devices. And apparently, when you power it down, it copies some data. See, the secure element contains some kind of signature that's used to identify your phone. And when you power it down, it copies some data from the secure element into some memory accessible to the always-on processor, pre-computed beacons, which it then sends out over Bluetooth periodically. So it turns on Bluetooth low energy while it is off, and it sends out beacons to identify where your phone is. Although that raises more questions. I mean, I wouldn't think Bluetooth would work unless you're near some other device, some other Apple device that's going to relay it or something. But anyway, that's what happens. So it's interesting to learn a little bit more about it. But apparently it is true that you can find your phone even when it's turned off, which seems like a good idea for most people, although there may be some privacy concerns. If you really want it to stop broadcasting its location, you could put it in a tin can to block all the radio, or take the battery out entirely. The tin can would probably be the safer move. And so the camera is apparently very good, and apparently you can take a good picture of somebody's eyes. So this guy can do clinical pictures of somebody's eye when he's doing surgery to see how they're healing. The phone is good enough for that purpose, which sounds pretty great. I've heard of the iPhone had a microscope app in earlier versions that you could use for real science. So that's nice. As the cameras get better and better, more cool things become possible. So Senator Dianne Feinstein from California has pushed this bill. It'll be talked about quite a lot, it's been talked a lot on the news. Fauci recommended it. Now, if you had to have a vaccine card to ride domestic flights, that would be another big mandate to encourage more people to get the vaccine. And so we'll see. Quoted in this article, they say that the airlines said they really don't want you to do this because it would be really hard for them to implement. But I don't know. I don't actually see why it would be so hard for them to implement when they do the security tests, like TSA, where they check your ID and your picture. They could be checking for a vaccine card at that point, I suppose. But anyway, so it's just a proposal right now. I don't know if it's going to pass. I've heard some Republicans claim that it would be illegal because the Constitution guarantees free travel between states, but I doubt that's true because you could just drive. I don't think the Constitution guarantees that you can ride every different device to go between states, but anyway, we'll see what happens with that. So this is another iPhone vulnerability that's pretty interesting. They've turned on, now I know how Apple Pay works. I use it all the time. You probably do too. Apple Pay, your phone has to be on and logged in. You bring it up to a reader and then you confirm with your face or something. In fact, I guess I don't really know if it has to be logged in, but you do have to confirm with your face or your PIN to make a purchase. So if somebody were to steal your phone, they wouldn't be able to use it to make payments. But there's a new thing where this replaces your BART card when you're going on the subway, and you can do it even when your phone is not unlocked, and it does not verify your thumbprint or your face or anything. So that means it can suck money out of your phone without verifying that it's your phone. Somebody could steal your phone and they can use it to get on BART or the subway or something. But supposedly, it's limited to only a small amount of money per day, so it's not a big risk. But apparently that second part is not true. This is called express transit, and what they found is they were able to steal 1,000 pounds from a test iPhone, which is quite a bit of money. So they're explaining, and I suppose Apple will probably have an update, but they mentioned in the meantime, you could just turn this off in the settings. Settings, Wallet, and Apple Pay Express Transit Card. You could just turn it off or use a card that's not Visa. Apparently, the flaw only applies to the Visa card. So if you change your Express Transit to connect to a different credit card, it'll be okay. So that's a good tip, I guess, if you want to use that. So this was posted, kind of interesting, in Yale. There is a special program to teach something called the grand strategy, which is, I've heard this in World War II context, the Great Game. This is the idea that you have a grand plan for your foreign policy and your moves are all like chess moves to get there. And it was funded by two conservative people named Brady and Johnson decades ago. And their theory was that it would always teach conservative principles. But this teacher is teaching it now, and she decided to put in liberal principles, things like diversity and stuff. And the funders who funded it very much don't want that. So they put pressure on the college, and the college told her to change her curriculum to match it. And then they said, we're going to have a panel of outside people to evaluate whether your content is good enough. And the panel, she said, well, they never had the panel before, but if you're going to have the panel, I got to choose some of the people so I can have some liberal people that value diversity. And they promised to do that, and then they didn't do it. And they're going to put Henry Kissinger on the panel and other right-wingers, so she quit, saying, this is the college putting political pressure to limit what she teaches in her classes. And this happens all the time at colleges. The biggest one I know was the Berkeley Loyalty Oath. I think in the 50s or 60s, part of McCarthyism, they made every professor at Berkeley swear an oath that they were not now and never had been a member of the Communist Party. And a bunch of them were communists. In the 40s and 50s, a lot of people were. And a whole bunch of other ones just objected to this on principle. So anybody at Berkeley who was famous or enough to get a job anywhere else, they all left, and it sucked huge amounts of smart professors from Berkeley, and they suffered for decades from the brain drain and had to attract a new crop of smart teachers after the scandal went down. So this happens many, many times, that the college government tries to politically limit what teachers can say. They tried it a bit on me, but didn't get very far. Anyway, so this one has got a lot of press, although I'm not that surprised. I mean, there's ransomware groups that specifically target hospitals, like they hit 300 or 400 hospitals, and of course they eventually killed somebody. They ransomwared this hospital. The hospital continued to operate and continued to take patients for like a month while the ransomware meant all their computer works were completely down, so they did everything just with paper. But what it meant was women giving birth, there's some kind of device, ultrasound or something, that measures the baby's heartbeat, and it was supposed to set an alarm if something's going wrong with the babies during birth, and those alarms were not functional, so they did not notice that this baby was being born with the umbilical cord around its neck choking it, and the baby died. And they say it was the ransomware that caused the baby to die. Now, it occurs to me, you could perhaps equally say that it was not the ransomware that killed the baby, it was the hospital that continued to do business when in fact they were not able to do business safely. But that's not the attitude they're taking. Anyway, this is getting a lot of people excited. And one of the things they claim is this is the first time that a human was killed by ransomware. And a lot of people are saying, in fact, this happened in Europe before. So I don't know. Anyway, all right. Realized I didn't have that turned on. All right. Are we 10 after? We are only 6 after. All right, let's keep going. So Epic is the far-right hosting. They host the American Nazi Party and a lot of other things, and they briefly hosted that Texas anti-abortion group where you can online turn in women that you think are going to have an abortion so that various people involved can get sued. But they kicked them off, and they went straight to Russian hosting. But Epic is run by a guy named Monster in Washington State, and they anonymous hacked him back in February, and now they have their second dump of the stuff they stole, and this is really unusual. Normally when they hack somebody and dump out their data, what you get is the files off the server. The files, the folders, the databases, and all that jazz, but they hacked complete forensic images of the devices. Yes, and apparently Anonymous is still around. That's right, they were quiet for years. Now they seem to have come back. And but they have complete forensic images. You can boot up these images and run a copy of their servers live. I've never heard of that happening before. In fact, it's right on topic for tonight's lecture of forensic images. I'm not even sure why you'd do that, but apparently they somehow managed to gain complete forensic images of their servers. So this is out there and people are booting it up so you can run their software and see what it goes. I know. I'm not entirely sure that's really what it must mean, for one thing, is maybe you could get deleted files if they're really forensic images. They're bootable images, but that doesn't mean they're forensic images. Anyway, it's but they've dumped, like they did with other big leaks, they've just dumped tons of data on BitTorrent for people to copy, and it's going to take journalists and activists and researchers like months to crawl through it and find the interesting stuff. Anyway, all right, so there's this guy who is a cryptocurrency mogul. He made the Ripple. Ripple has always been one of the top 5 cryptocurrencies. It's a very strange thing, much more like regular currency. It's actually centralized. But anyway, like anybody else who made one of the early big cryptocurrency, he made some vast amount of money. And so he's very rich, and he wants to solve social problems. So he's one thing he decided to do was his car got broken into in San Francisco. So he set up, he funded cameras to be monitoring all the roads in a neighborhood in San Francisco. And then he wanted to address privacy concerns. So he made it so that they cannot be continuously monitored by the police. In fact, they're not continuously monitored by anyone. They just record somewhere. But what happens is if there's a police report, the police can come request, we would like to see what happened on this block in this period of time. And then they can get a limited picture of that block on that period of time. And they have to do that within 30 days or it all gets deleted. So his idea is it's not, you can't use it for a fishing expedition where you just try to watch what's going on to look for crime you don't know about, but you can use it to capture evidence for crimes that you respond to in a timely fashion. And a lot of people are claiming it's not good and it's surveillance, but he says he thinks he's made reasonable attempts to protect people's privacy. Anyway, this is what I think China is trying to avoid very much. In America, we now have a whole bunch of billionaires that are so rich that they are effectively as powerful as the government, and they can change policy. Like, Bill Gates wants to cure diseases with vaccines and stuff, and all these guys want to fly to the moon and stuff like that. There's are policies that normally would be implemented by the government are instead implemented by random billionaires. And it's very clear that Xi Jinping has decided he is not going to allow this to happen. He's stopping Jack Ma. He's removing the celebrities that would make a lot of money. He's trying to make all the individuals that are important be sort of pounded down to be like the others, so that the government will make all the big decisions and no individual people will be so powerful that they can have huge sway anymore, which I think is pretty much what Mao would have done. He's greatly resembling Mao. Anyway, all right, so I think that's enough of that, and let me get to the official stuff. I'll stop this recording.